Welcome everyone to Breaking Into Tech. I'm really excited to be back here. I'm Amanda Huffman, host of Breaking Into Tech, and we're here with Chris, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience at Sabio. So welcome to the show, Chris. We're so excited to have you here.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And if you guys are watching live or if you're watching later, you can always put questions in the comments or just say hi, and we'll try and answer questions live, or I'll come back and make sure to keep checking if you have a question so that we can get all your questions answered. So let's get started with a little bit about your background. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you grew up? I know you served in the military, so tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, so I'm 27 years old. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, Pretty young at 17, I joined the military, joined the Army. I was working with the Patriot and THAAD missile system. Got to travel been around the world, um, and I was doing that for about 7.5 years. I got out of the military, and after I got out of the military, I was a truck driver for a little bit. Didn't really like that too much, and so I decided to take that big step into tech and go to Sabio and work on my full stack development program.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit before we hit play for or I guess live, about how when you went through to become a truck driver, you found out there was a program you could have used. Instead, you used your GI Bill, but you did use vet tech for Sabio. So, how did you learn about vet tech when you were starting looking into software engineering and
Yeah,
tech?
I actually didn't know anything about vet tech, so I was calling, all these different schools, and I, ended up eventually calling Sabio, and they're really quick to respond, which was like really good. And when I was on the phone with the entry, um, they're telling me like, hey, are you taking vet tech? Have you even looked into it? And they're so friendly, and they're actually the ones that like kind of guided me towards that and told me about it. And I looked into it a little bit, and then it's a great program. It's an amazing program.
So it was when you reached out to Sabio that you learned about vet tech. That's awesome to hear
Mhm.
that. I mean, it's not awesome that veterans aren't hearing about these great programs. We were talking a little bit about that before too, but it's great that Sabio, recognized that you're a veteran and then asked you like, "Are you going to use this program?" And you're like, "What program?" And then you started looking into it and it was like, "Of course I am. Why wouldn't I use it?"
Mhm, mhm.
So, I guess we should go back a little bit because it sounds like you found vet tech after you found Sabio. What led you to look into software engineering?
Yeah, so a little bit backstory too. My stepdad is actually a software developer. So when I was in middle school and high school, he was a veteran too, and he, started that journey to go down that path. So I watched him do it, and as a young adult, as a child, I really like problem solving, and so looking at his textbooks and kind of actually like following along with his college courses and doing like some of his work with him, I realized like this is something I'm really interested into, like problem solving. So I actually, going into high school, I really started looking into like engineering programs and stuff like that. But I knew I always wanted to serve in the military before, I had a career after that. So I knew that was going to be down the road. So that's really what started this engineering journey. I kind of played around with the idea of, aerospace engineering and electrical engineering. But I kind of had that mindset, like, what do I want, like, for my career? And the biggest thing that I wanted is, kind of the freedom that is involved in being in software, the freedom to move, the freedom to live in different locations or where I want to live, compared to some of these other fields where you're kind of locked in certain areas.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And then, I mean, a lot of people think you have your GI Bill, you could go to a 4-year institution. What led you to start looking into a boot camp program instead of a 4-year degree?
Yeah, I actually did. I applied for college. I got accepted for Arizona State University, and I was about to do the computer science program or cybersecurity program with them. And I just thought about, where do I see myself in 5 years? And the question wasn't just starting my career at 31 years old. I already had a career, and I didn't want to basically restart my life, which every service member has to do when they get out. But that's kind of what I ended up doing, and I kind of wanted, I wouldn't say a shortcut, but uh, a way to learn everything I needed to learn and get my foot in the door, because I know that's the hardest thing. So once you learn what you need to do and get your foot in the door, I feel like you're set in that career and you can take off in it.
Yeah, and I think Sabio offers a lot of those things. I mean, obviously the career curriculum is so that you have all the skills you need, but then they also have, helping you find a job and the network and all those things can help you, which I think are why the program is so valuable. And I love how you talk about, you know, 4 years or 5 years later, where am I going to be if I do Sabio 17 weeks and then I get a job, after shortly after those 17 weeks. That's a lot shorter than 4-year degree, and then, I mean, you don't really have any experience except classroom experience, and
Hmm.
gives
Hmm.
you that hands-on experience.
Yeah, that hands-on experience is really big. And, also, you talk about 5 years, I can be a lead developer in 5 years. My lead right now, he's been at the company for 5 years and now he's my lead, so I wouldn't be able to have those opportunities and be in that position. And nothing says that once you get your foot in the door, you can't, keep going to college and get that degree while you're in, and work towards that bachelor's and then that master's. And the best part about it is a lot of veterans can use their GI Bill, but a lot of tech companies also offer benefits for education. My company personally, it's an amazing company. They offer benefits to go to school. They also offer benefits for like graduating from certain certificate classes, and there's a lot of stuff that tech companies offer. And that's part of the reason that this field is really amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear about that. I mean, after you graduate from Sabio, you get your job, and then, the company you work for, or you use your military benefits, you could go back to school and get that degree, or, continue to take courses and continue. I think the thing I like most about the software development is like the continuation of learning, like especially with technology changing and AI, and it seems like a really fun career, especially if you're like a strength finders. Learning is very high on my strength finders, and so whenever I hear the graduates talking about the different things, I'm like, you're always learning, you're always taking new courses, and you're always growing your skills, and nothing ever stays the same. I mean, the basic language of coding stays the same, but there's always new things to learn and new challenges.
Yeah, yeah. And that's actually, one of the biggest things is, in the military, there's a point where you reach where you feel like you might get kind of stagnant and you can't really, there's almost, you're at a wall. You kind of go to work and you do your job every day and that's all it is. The same thing with my other career as a truck driver. It's, there's not much learning going on. And I'm a person, I'm like a sponge. I love the process of learning new stuff and implementing it and always trying to be better than who I was yesterday. And this career allows you to do that. And that's something I really enjoy about it.
That's awesome. So let's hear, you talked a little bit about like you reached out to Sabio and they told you about VecTech and they helped you in the process of getting into Sabio. You said you were looking at a bunch of different companies and or programs. So what led you to decide I'm going to go with Sabio and continue with their program opposed to the other ones you looked at?
Hmm. Yeah, there were a few things. One of the biggest things was, the response. I called, they answered. Not only that, they were super friendly, super helpful. Just the feeling that I got from it was, good energy, and they actually like cared for their students. It's not just a paycheck for them. That was the first thing. The second thing is, them telling me about vet tech and, being on that, priority list, I think it is. But yeah, telling me about vet tech and, looking out for me as a veteran or just as a person, just looking out for me. I feel like I didn't really get that with a lot of other companies. And then other programs as well, it seems like they were 1 day a week and they were still 6 months long. And the thing for me is like I want that personal interaction. I get stuck. Need help. I want to be able to reach out to someone. And Sabio is one of those few courses that I found that is, yes, it's difficult being there every day all the time and the requirements, but there's a reason why they do that. And I think that's what leads to them, having such a great outcome with their alumni getting positions.
Yeah, it's very intense and rigorous, and but then you also have the support. Like a lot of the past graduates have talked about the queue. Like I was stuck, so I went into the queue, and I love when they say, and they were like, "Okay, how'd you get stuck?" It's not, "Oh, let me fix the problem." It's helping you learn how to problem solve on your own, and so the the staff and the teachers are so amazing at Sabio with the way that they teach the courses and they help you guys learn. So, what was the like boot camp part? Like you got in, you started the classes. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so obviously going to new experiences, any new experience, you're obviously gonna have a lot of questions of what's going on and stuff like that. But I definitely feel like the integration part to get to that point, when you get selected for the program or you apply for the program, you show you want to go, they give you that like pre-course you can take, right? And which is kind of a jump start to what you're going to be learning, and then it helps for when you first get there kind of to know what's going on and stuff like that. And then you get there and you're like, okay, well, this seems kind of familiar. I kind of worked with this a little bit, right? It doesn't make it as scary or as intimidating, I guess is the best word. And that really helped a lot. That's something else I really liked from the program. And then when you get there, the weeks are long, but like I said, it's all worth it. Going through the program and doing your daily stand-ups and, having the queue there and, at the end going through what seems like an internship where you're, working for a company, a startup company, and helping them produce something and product. The whole experience and the stepping stones they help you go through learning, one piece and then that connects to the next piece and then kind of connects to the next piece. And then you have the whole picture. Um, I really feel like breaking it up the way they did really helps with the learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talked about the internship, the cohort you did. What was the project that you got to work on with the company?
Yeah, so we worked with a company called Monify, and that is a international finance company that's trying to help small businesses and small business owners. Um, and when we got onto the project, my cohort, it was already started, but there was still a lot of work to be done, and yeah, so it's a great company. I'm actually still in contact with, the owner of the company. There's some of us that alumni that are still in contact with him and, we'll help him from here to there, which, I feel like that's one of the biggest things about Sabio that has helped me in the real world, like going and getting a job, is having that experience and having that on my resume as well, saying, hey, I've completed this, I've done that. I've worked in an agile, kind of environment. Where I'm working in a team that has a lead, all that stuff is directly relates to getting a job in the tech field and getting a career. And not only that, those skills that I learned, like working in that environment, have directly correlated with, where I am now at the company and how I communicate to my lead.
Yeah, I love the cohort and that you're working directly with a company, not some made up company, and then that you can put that on your resume. And that's like the number one thing that like entry level work people are like, it's entry level, but they say I have to have experience. And how am I supposed to get experience? And I love that Savio makes it so that you do have that experience that you can put on your resume. And so that puts you ahead of someone who, graduated from college and has no experience of actually doing the work. So I love that part of Savio's program. So as you get closer to graduation, they give you the ability to start sending out resumes. They they bring you in and tell you it's not time, it's not okay, now it's time. So what was the process of, sending out resumes and starting to get interviews and going through that process to get a job? What was that like?
Yeah, so fine tuning the resume is definitely an art by itself, as anyone that applies for jobs knows. You got to fine tune it, find what works for you, and apply for jobs, and then keep updating it. When we first started applying for jobs, not many people were getting calls back. And, especially because you're so excited to get started, you think, the first day, first few days you apply, you're going to hear replies. And you hear from the other cohorts like, hey, that's not going to happen. Be patient. But, everyone gets their hopes up and, you may get let down a little bit. But for me, the experience was, pretty well. But I also, I applied I got my job pretty quick. In about 2.5 weeks, I got my job. 2 days after graduation, I got my job. But I also did, 1,000 and close to 1,500 resumes or applications. But for me, and I feel like with a lot of people, it's really finding what you want, first of all, and sticking to that. And then also figuring out what works for you in your past. And that will help determine where you apply, what positions you apply for. If you have previous experience working in, a financial company, then that may help you get a job software developing at a finance company because you understand the business side. For me, I was in the military, so I leaned into that very hard, especially, with missile defense. I leaned into that very hard. So every job I saw that had missile defense, I didn't care how much experience it said, I applied. Um, and that actually, my job was requesting 10 years of experience, and working on, things I haven't even worked on, SharePoint being one of them, you know, and I still, breezed through the interview and ended up getting the position, for the exact amount that I asked for. So.
Yeah, that's such good advice of knowing like what you want because before we were talking about how TAP, the transition assistance program that you take when you leave the military is so like it doesn't really prepare you, I feel like, for the job market, but Sabio has a system, where you have to send out 1,000 resumes. Like no one when I was leaving the military said you're not gonna get responses right away. They're gonna be like, everyone wants you, and you send out like 5 resumes, you don't hear back, and you get discouraged. But when you have Sabio, they're like, no, you have to send out hundreds, thousands of resumes. And I love that you talked about like figuring out what you want, because a lot of times veterans will settle for a job just because they're like, I need a job, I have to get a job, and then they're in something and they don't like it, and then they leave 6 months later. So I love how you talked about like lean into your past experience and see how that can help you. You used your military and your missiles and how you could use that into finding a job, and the fact that you don't have to look at the qualification. Oh, don't disqualify yourself. Like they can do that. That's their job. They're supposed to disqualify you if you don't meet their requirements. So that's such great advice when applying for jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I had a pretty interesting experience too with that, like saying exactly what you said, don't disqualify yourself. Apply for everything that you think you can. I ended up at the end getting 5 job offers. I accepted this one, for certain reasons. We can get into that later. But one of the other job offers I have was actually as DevOps, which has nothing to do with coding. There's a little bit, but I knew nothing about it. And I got a job offer for it. Granted, that job offer was overseas in Kuwait, but I ended up, accepting this job offer that I have now already. But yeah, like I knew nothing about the job, and they're asking me questions in the interview, all these questions, and I'm not doing, too well at the interview. But I'm being honest. I'm like, hey, I know nothing about this, but I can tell you that I'm a hard worker, and I'm willing to learn, and that's my greatest asset. And if you don't want a hard worker or someone that's willing to like learn on your team, I'm sorry, that's your loss. Obviously I didn't say that, but that's kind of what I'm going for in the mood in the interview is like, hey, I'm an asset to your team no matter I know this or not, and I'm going to be here a long time.
Yeah, explaining exactly what value you bring. I think that's another thing that veterans really have challenged. They don't know how, or they haven't learned how to translate their skills they learned in the military and how they benefit the employer. And you're able to say like, I'm a hard worker, I love learning, it's part of who I am, and that's what I bring to the table. I may not understand this stuff right now, but I'm willing to work hard. And so it sounds like you were really ready for the interviews. Were there any tips or advice you got from alumni or from Sabio that helped you prepare for the interviews?
Yeah, so Sabio, they have those interview questions that they kind of help you out with, to kind of prepare you, and I was really big on studying those and learning. Sabio is really great about teaching you. In the beginning you learn how to do it, but not why you're doing it, which is great because if they spent so much time teaching you why, then you would never really be able to understand that much information that fast. But at the end, you really, when you start going into a product, you really start to learn, why am I doing this? What are the fundamentals of what I'm learning about? Some of those same things that the college students would learn. And so you start to understand a little bit more. And so learning those questions really helped me with the interview. And then, asking each other members in your cohort, asking them questions, even personal questions, working on those personal traits on how to sell yourself, and then also talking to each other about, hey, how did your interview go? What type of questions did you get asked, for this position, so we can be prepared for it, because a lot of these companies will ask the same type of, personal questions and even tech questions.
Yeah, so the more information you have from other people who've gone through interviews. I love that you talked about the cohort, and it sounds like you had a good community around you of people. You guys got along well and you worked together well and you were able to help each other, not only getting through the process of getting through the coding boot camp, but also to help find a job on the other side. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, yeah, and we're still, the community that we have, we still try and stay in touch as much as possible. Actually, someone from my cohort, he ended up moving to the same place that I work at down in Huntsville, Alabama. Um, and he had two job offers here. One was actually from my company. I actually, told him to apply, and he got to the final round, but he ended up choosing the other company. He basically had the job, but he did choose another company. So it's interesting, that we're moved to the same location and we're in the same cohort and we were working together on the same product. But we still keep in contact with, the other people all around the United States and catching up with them and trying to throw job offers at each other. And I feel like that's the biggest thing about Sabio. It helps get you a network in a community, because in any career that you're in, I feel like having that network and knowing people is always the biggest asset you can have.
Yeah, because the knowing people at different companies can help get you your foot in the door. And Sabio has such a good reputation in the tech world that, being a graduate of Sabio is also a thing that companies, who have had past graduates be hired and, be good workers. That's like, oh, they're good. They went through Sabio's program. I know. Yeah. I think the network is one of the best parts, especially for so many of the Sabio students, because you come in with no tech background, and then at the end you have all these connections and uh, the alumni and your cohort, and you can help each other in so many ways. And having a network is invaluable, and so many people don't realize how important that is.
And even still, being able to reach out to those other mentors. I'm starting the mentor process myself now with Sabio and going to be a mentor with Sabio. But I still reach out to the other mentors, with questions about, hey, about this, or what's your experience with this? Because some of them been in the tech field for many years now. And so if I'm thinking about switching companies, or what about this company, stuff like that. You have that ability to go to someone or multiple people that have those experiences, and not make a, uh, for lack of a better word, an ignorant kind of call, because you have no idea.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So important to have those people who can help guide you. So, if someone's listening and they're thinking, should I get in a career of software engineering, what advice would you give them?
Go to Sabio for one.
Great
Yeah,
advice. I love it.
yeah, honestly, a lot of the problem with tech and going into software developing or anything is there's so much information out there. Where do you even start? And I've tried to look into it myself. I had a college course here, and I tried to, here and there, and I tried to learn code on my own, with like Code Academy and stuff like that. And it's definitely like difficult. Um, Definitely get your feet wet, see if you like it. There's like little game programs out there you can do as well. Get your feet wet, see if you like it. And if you like it, definitely, probably jump into one of these programs. Even if it's not some career path that you end up choosing, especially if you're a veteran, like it's no cost to you. No cost. If you don't like it, then you get a job, and maybe it's not the career field that you see yourself being in for a long time. Then you could always go back to college or do something else. But yeah, just if you're interested and you like it, give it a shot. Try to go to Sabio, and it teaches you everything you could possibly learn, front end, back end, everything. Um, that would be it. Maybe talk to some people in the field as well to see how they like it. And I guarantee everyone, every IT person I know that's a software developer, they love their job, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't remember if it was the last interview or a few before that, but he went to Sabio, he graduated, he was doing tech, and now he's still with the same company, but he's on the like sales side, and he's not doing the software development side anymore, but his background and knowledge of the tech has helped him on the sales, so he can like translate stuff that the sales team wants, and then he can explain it to the tech side, and then the tech side can give him like troubleshooting, and then he can say it to the sales team. So he's kind of like this go between, and he's not directly doing the coding anymore, but he's using that knowledge and experience and helping that further his career and doing more with it. So I love that you talk like you don't have to you're not stuck in it forever. It can open doors to more opportunities in the future, and everything is a stepping stone. So yeah. So my last question is, where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years? Liliana always wants me to ask if you guys are considering starting your own tech startup, or what do you see yourself in the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I actually started my own software program, I guess you can say. That's actually, I knew when I was getting out that I was going to be a developer at some point. So I kind of, when I was truck driving, I kind of had an idea and created this, idea of an app that I wanted created. And now that I have the skills to do it, I started doing that. Do I think I'm going to own that company? No, but I am hoping to eventually make a small fortune selling it. But that's the goal, and Sabio really gave me the tools to be able to work with that. And I'm actually trying to work with some of my other cohort members to actually build that as well, and start a little team of my own. But that I don't want that to be my primary job. I like my salary. I like making an income. Eventually, one day, if I make it big, selling the company, who knows? But for now, 2 to 5 years, I definitely see myself, expanding the skills that I have now, what Sabio taught me, and hopefully taking my boss's job, which I've told him multiple times. Funny story. That's actually why a part of the reason why I got the job, because I said I was going to take his job. Um, Having that ambition and seeing where you're going to be in 2 to 5 years, I feel like is very important, especially for someone trying to hire you. Um, but yeah, I think I'm going to hopefully be at this company still and be the team lead.
I love it. I love that you have your eyes focused on, and not even like now, but you're like, when you applied for the job, you're like, I want to be in your position in 5 years. And you're like, you're hired. You're exactly the person that we want. And that's really cool that that was something that came up in the interview. And I love that you have like a side project, that you have, the skills to do the coding, and you can take your idea that you've had on, a piece of paper and use it and start to work with not only yourself, but other members of your cohort. That's really cool to hear too. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing about your experience with Sabio. It was really fun to have you as a guest. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.